Hello and welcome to episode 08 of the New School HR podcast. It's been a while. Guess who's back? Time to crack on with Series 1. So, it has been a while. It's been about 2 months, I think. So, basically, a lot has been going on. Haven't really had the time to dedicate to the podcast as I've been doing stuff with my regular day job. So, yeah, it's been a while. It's been long overdue. My plan was to kind of at least go down to one episode a month, but the month of October was just crazy. So that's what the delay has been about. While I'm here, I just want to address a couple of things. Firstly, the podcast has got over 320 listens, which, provided it's only myself doing all of this and advertising this, I'm really pleased with. I didn't think I would get to that level, to be honest. But then again, there is enough episodes there. And I think the average listen rate is about 30 plus, with a couple of episodes hitting 50. So that's really cool. We've hit something like 22 countries as well, which is quite cool as well. So it's nice to know that my voice has transcended across the world. That's amazing. Hopefully that means there's more mistakes being made globally. I joke. So yeah, where are we in the world? I know we haven't really done this and I try to avoid certain topics, but hey, how cool is it that yesterday Apple announced a new MacBook Pro? I'm currently using one, so I'm a little bit excited. Mine is from 2012, believe it or not. So that's quite cool. The new Xbox has come out. I'm sorry, I like video games. Haven't managed to convince my wife to buy me one yet, but that's also pretty cool. PlayStation 5 next week, I think, or next month. Definitely got no chance of getting that as well. But hey, we can try. So, yeah, look, I think we've all got other things going on. We're in lockdown. Lockdown? It is a bit like lockdown, isn't it? Lockdown 2.0 in the UK, because why not? I'm quite fortunate. I actually still can go to the workplace, so still able to sort of get out the house in some respects. But I look at people I know who've been stuck at home now since March, working from home or potentially not having a job anymore. So there's a lot going on in the world, and hopefully there's a little bit of humor in this to get you through some of it. So, episode 08. I don't even know what it's about. I have to open up the iPad. Let's have a look. Your new company. So this is obviously part of series 1. There was 10 episodes planned. My plan is to finish all 10 before the end of the year. Fingers crossed and all that jazz. So just to give you an overview, there's only 7 elements to this one. So the first bit is who are they? What does Google say? Glassdoors. Oh, that was a little notification. That's interesting. Questions that keep coming up in sex therapy. Why do I keep having irrelevant stuff going on? That was from Apple News before any of you think anything else. Corporate social responsibility. That's perfect timing. Sector rank. Sales and revenue. Opportunities and a 12-month plan, if they have one. So, let's jump straight into the first bit. So, who is the company? Who are they? What do they do? And this is one where, actually, I've been interviewing the last couple of weeks, interviewing for new roles, and one of the questions is, what do you know about the company? And you'd be surprised how many people don't know, even though there's a company website which explains a lot. Or you get people who have kind of just looked at the immediate sort of history, if you like. So, yeah, it's quite interesting. And I think, look, you need to understand what the company is offering as an overall package. You need to understand what it is they do and what different elements you may be supporting. So, for example, if you work with a company that is retail, do they have a logistics model? Do they have a sales division? Do they have online capabilities? These kind of things are important, and I think a lot of HR people just kind of bypass that. It's a nonsense. You have to understand what the company is offering, what the services are. Is it B2B? Is it business to person? Like, what is the capabilities? And the other thing to think about is you might have experiences from your career yourself that you might be able to translate into this company. So it's always worth knowing that. We took a little break there because I have a hot chocolate next to me. Yep, I've discovered hot chocolate since I've been away. The next thing I say is, the next thing I say to find out is, what is the company's mission? Now, the current company I work with actually doesn't have one. So that's a bit redundant there. But most companies do. And it is important to understand its mission, because this actually needs to be something that you translate into your own role and what you're doing. So, for example, the last company I was at, their mission was to become the biggest. I can't say what it is because that will give away what they did. Their ambition was to become the biggest provider of a certain service in their industry, and you need to be able to translate this, understand it, and understand if this is what the direction is being given out by the directors. Because if it says, for example, they want to be the biggest sales force of a particular item in the UK, then you know that they're going to be aggressive in their approach, and they're going to be looking at sales, 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 not so much the other side of it. Whereas you get some companies that say their mission is to be the most green distribution company. So then, if you're going to be buying diesel vans, then that kind of defeats the object of it. So it's understanding those kind of things, what the mission is, how they're planning to get there, because the mission also tells you how the company is going to get there. And there's no point me reeling off stuff, because companies will have all different things. But it is important to know that, because that could be potentially your objectives or your bonus for the next couple of years, ensuring that the company goes down that path. So it's always worth checking these kind of things. The next bit ties in, really, is the company strategy. So what is the strategy for them achieving this? So are they looking at a sales target, a profit target? Are they looking at reintroducing a new fleet? Are they looking at new learning tools? What is it that they're going to do to get to their goal? The next bit is ye old values. Everybody loves a bit of values, don't they? And do I believe in values? I do, and I've worked in one place where the values were incorporated into every single part of your working life. It was in your PDR reviews, it was in the way that you communicated your KPIs. Everything was based on the values, and people would actually pull you aside and say, actually, that's not in line with this value. And did I like working that way? I think I did. I think when you're tied in and invested, when you do things like induction, when you onboard new people, it does create a good sense of team morale. It creates a sense of a business where people want to come, because there's a principle underlying there. The second company I worked for, I can't really say that they had values, and I think towards the end of my time there, that was more incorporated. I think it was always there, a bit similar. It was always in the materials, but I don't know if people actually lived it. And I think it wasn't until we got the last director I worked with there in the HR team that people started to actually think about it and incorporate it into their working life. I think in order for those things to work, you have to call out the good and the bad as and when it happens. Otherwise, people just see it as a constant piece of paper or something that is there. And actually, that's all it is, just there. When you get a bonus or something, link it to a value. I guess the thing with values is, where are these kept? Who is responsible for delivering that message, whether it's a new starter, whether it's people that have been there for a long time? Do the employees even know what the values are? And I think that's one of the hardest things. If you ask me now, do I know what the values are? Nope. Did I ever know what the values are? All 5 or 6? Nope. 5's quite a lot when you're on the spot and someone says, hey, what's the values? And you're like, 1, 2, 3, or you get the companies where they change the values, and then you're talking about one that was relevant a year ago, which sounds very similar but isn't the same word, and then you just look like a prick. So I don't mind values. I think values are good as long as they're incorporated and executed, not executed as in murder. It's a bit extreme. The next part is to understand who the senior management team is, or senior leadership team, or the executive committee, whatever you want to call them. The people that earn the most money. Who are they? What's their background? What are they like as people? If you have access, I mean, that's the other piece, right? Where I was working previously, I did have access to some of the SLT, and I worked directly with them actually. So yeah, I did get to know them, and I had to know them. And this is very important because their presence and their stance and whatever will filter down to that team or that function. So for example, where I am now, there's a sales manager, and you can see a very distinctive style in how they manage sales, or how they believe a sales team should function. And if I compare that to the previous company I worked for, it was very different. So that's two completely different models of sales, two different instructions. One was about gaining, one was about retaining, and they chop and change, and you'll see that these execs will chop and change along with that. So it is quite important to know that, because when you're doing the recruitment for that team, you need to think about how that filters upwards as well. Does that person fit the right behaviors, the right qualities, and the right path that SLT member wants to go? Again, this sounds really bad. It might not be the level you're operating at, but if you have some sort of knowledge of what their style is, it only makes it easier. So I thought I had this Final Cut Pro thing worked out. Oh, by the way, the sponsorship shout out. Thank you to T-Man for the sponsorship of this new system that we have in place that I can't fucking use. Somehow I've done the thing again where, you know what, it'd be really cool. I guess one day I should actually sit down and learn how to use this. So, this is where I should have just taken a chocolate break. So somehow it's duplicated itself, even though I've only got one line. Anyway, so continuing on, who is the direct competition, and who are the new boys on the scene? Because if you think back to retail, you've got the online market, you've got those independent retailers, and then you got the big old giants like the one I used to work for. And actually, the big old giants just kind of look there like, yeah, we're getting continuous growth, we're getting continuous profit, this is fucking amazing. But they don't look at what the independents are doing and what they're, they have a certain amount of freedom, and they're not compelled to the same sort of thing that the big companies are involved in. And sometimes actually they get new technology and they'll purchase it, and do they always get it right? No, they don't. But it's always worth keeping an eye on the competition. Even as HR, it's worth doing that, because I always used to, in the last company I was at, it's a very incestuous industry. Is that the word? Incestuous. And we used to just, it was like, have you seen Dave Chappelle? Actually, I can't even reference that because I'll probably get slaughtered for it. Basically, trading off people. If you've seen the Dave Chappelle thing that I'm talking about, then yeah, you know what I mean. But anyway, trading people, they'd be like, yeah, we'll take that experienced person, you can take our crappy person. That's literally what it was. And these people would just move about and get more money every time, and then come back to where I was and demand like 20k more than what they were on. And we'd be like, no, you're not worth it. I remember a manager sitting there and be like, do you know you're not fucking worth it? So just shut the fuck up and get out of my office. That was quite funny. But anyway, it's important to know these things, because from a HR perspective, some of them, there is money spent on L&D tools or HR systems or services that are used, and different sort of HR functions. So I always used to make a point to actually get to know, when we onboarded someone from a competitor, what was it they did last year. Even things like bonus, that was quite handy. One of the years we were reviewing our bonus, and we had like three different manager staff from three different competitors, and it was quite cool to get an insight into their bonus. They actually, I mean, I probably shouldn't condone this, but they gave us the actual bonus plans, and it's quite good to see what we were up against in terms of when people used to leave us and say, well, actually, I've been offered this, this, and this. And I know you fucking weren't. That's not the bonus scheme. I've got it right here. Not that you would do that for someone you want to leave, but it's actually quite a good thing to have in your back pocket, the old proverbial back pocket. I've covered that point. So, on to point 2. So, I've labeled this, what does Google say? But it could be any search engine, and I'll probably get prosecuted for saying Google. What does a search engine say? Let's put it that way. So, first thing is, what appears when you search the company name? Hopefully it's the website first, but sometimes it can be bad press. And does that deter people? I think there's every big major company will have some sort of slanderous issue or something out there in the world. But it is important to know that, because as a HR person, I think I touched on this in like episode 2 or something. And if I got that right, that's amazing. But I remember talking about the recruitment person saying that they were quite concerned that if somebody searched the company's name, what would they find? And that is important to know, because 1, you'll be trying to onboard people, but 2, you'll also have your employees who are there already who don't like the business or like you or whatever, who will rise to that. So it is important to know what's out there. It's not that you can control it. Sometimes you can. I mean, I've had incidents where people have threatened to go to the press and stuff like that. I'm a bit adventurous. I call their bluff. I don't really fall for that kind of shit, but I know that companies would potentially be put out by that. But it is important to understand what is there, like I say, for people to be able to access and potentially use against you, or use as a tool to maybe bargain with or something like that. You get people who will see something and be like, yeah, I've witnessed that, and I'm gonna hone in on it. It's like, you ain't witnessed nothing. Shut the fuck up and sit down. But it is worth doing that. Is your company the first hit? So the last company I worked for had the exact same name as another company, and I don't think we was the first hit if you typed it in. Very popular brand in most locations, just like the actual company I worked for. So that's also worth knowing as well, because how many times when I used to tell people where I work, they're like, oh, you can get me this one specific piece of equipment. No, we're not them. We do everything else. So yeah, always worth knowing that. The other thing is the information on your website up to date? And I remember I went for a job interview for my previous workplace, and used an iPad and got all this research and did a lot of stuff, took it to the interview, even showed them, and they were like, oh, wow, that's amazing. That's 2008. Well, that's not my fault. We're sitting in 2015. You ain't even got the fucking date on the website. So, yeah. I mean, obviously I didn't say that in the interview. I probably would have if I was where I am today. Not as in where I'm employed today, I mean where I am in terms of confidence. But yeah, always worth knowing is that there, because if you ask people to give you information about a company and then everything is out of date, well then, if we rewind to the beginning of this point, you've totally undone everything they can. The other thing is there negative reviews? I'm going to touch on this in the next one, but you can find stuff on other things other than Glassdoor as well. So it's worth knowing, is there anything there that is from someone who was employed by the business? I've seen things on Facebook, as an example, about specific managers and stuff like that. And while that is a platform that's there, if you go on Facebook at that time, I mean, I don't know now, I think they've done a lot of stuff since then, but if you go on Facebook at that point and you search the company name, the first thing you find is this guy going in on the manager. So these things are quite useful to know. The other thing is, when you search for yourself, do any of your competitors appear? So I've not seen it myself, but people tell me like, if you put something in, there's every likelihood you might find your competitor as an alternative. And if they're in the same sort of picture as you might get people who you're trying to recruit. For example, if you're looking for a salesperson, they might actually see your competitor there and think, oh, I might see if they've got a job, and it turns out they do, and then, yeah. So it's always worth knowing that as well. Where is your hit? Is that what it's called? Hit. Where is it going to land? So, yeah, I think that's it for point 2. So, everyone's favorite. Oh, am I a bit too close? I can't work out the sound on this, by the way. I sound really quiet on the playback. So, hopefully, when this is being played, it plays okay. Again, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing with this tool. Anyway, so glass doors. Now, if you're HR and you've had an experience with glass doors, that means you know what I'm talking about. This thing is fucked up. I mean, I get the whole point of glass doors, as in the name. It's quite fucking ironic, but I'm going to say 70% inaccurate in terms of some of the comments and stuff you see. I might be wrong, but that's just my personal opinion. So, first thing is, on glass doors, you need to make sure the information that you have control of is up to date. And the data that you have control of is also up to date. Because if you've got negative things on there that are out of date, people, I think you can filter. I mean, I've never had the actual full membership. That's how much attention I pay to it, rightly or wrongly. But if you've got the correct data, that should actually counteract some of the negativity you can have on there. The other thing I look at is there entries from both current and ex-employees? Now, the last employer I worked for was encouraging people to go on there and write stuff because we had loads of negative stuff on there. Not loads, that's a lie, but quite directed and stuff on there. And, look, you're going to get ex-employees who are not happy. And if you're in a period of change or transition or transformation, I know that's all the same thing, but just shut up and listen. Then it's going to happen. You're going to have a lot of disgruntled people. If you're merging businesses or you're merging departments or whatever, there's every chance people are going to take to that in the wrong way and voice their opinions. And I think the main thing is that if you handle things the right way and you deliver messages in the right way, you shouldn't have that. I'd like to think I've never seen anything as a part of what I have done on glass doors. I don't personally know if that's factual, but I don't think I have ever caused that. And that's because of how you deliver a message and how you handle these sensitive issues. But the reality is, if you start asking people to go and fill it out, it's so fake and it's so noticeable that it just makes everything seem worse, in my opinion. So I'd say try not to force people, let people do if they want to. And if there's ex-employees that are disgruntled, reply to that shit. Give people the opportunity. Yeah, that's one thing they were good at, though, when they got the negative stuff. They were really good at offering people the opportunity to come forward and have a discussion. Coming back to the data stuff, on there you can look at things like salaries, benefits, and company data. Now, I don't understand why businesses hide things like salaries and benefits from people. The first company I ever worked for, which I worked for plus of 5 years to 10 years, everything was transparent. The salaries were there. You knew that if you worked in one location, you got paid less than someone that was in a more central location. It was all there. I didn't see riots. I saw people say, actually, I can do that job, and actually, I can earn that money. And I saw it as myself personally, as I was going through my journey as the old trolley boy, I saw it as a, what's the word? Inspirational kind of thing. Because I thought to myself, rah, if that man can earn 27K and I'm here on 15K, that's a lot K more, you know? So I don't know why people choose to hide this stuff. I don't know what the thing is. Maybe someone can educate me. But I do know if I ever get to a place where I have my own capability to have a stance, I'm not hiding that shit. So whoever employs me in my first HR director role, I'm not hiding that shit. I've covered the next point. What's the next one? Do current employees even know what Glassdoors is? That's cool. That's a good one. Because I only found out what Glassdoors was because I was looking for another job. Like, this is, I think, when I was at my first company. That's how I found it, because I was looking at what my salary rate should be and all stuff like that. And I guess nowadays you can use things like LinkedIn as well. So I don't know if Glassdoors is really used so much. I mean, I'll be honest, I've never even Glassdoors the company I work for today. Should we do that? Let's do that. Boom, 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 boom. That's some fake intro movie. Glassdoors, company name. Oh, let's see. Oh, we're on there. We are on there. Oh, that's not great. Let's have a look at this. Let's see. Well, that's interesting. Huh? We like that. Don't like that. Oh. When was this? Oh. Well, that's interesting. Okay. So this is an example. So, soul destroying and not good for anyone, but you rated us 4 stars. That doesn't make sense. Oh. Okay. Okay. So this is what I mean, right? We're seeing stuff. So, okay. Yeah. I know I'm not sharing it, but oh. Oh, that's 2016, okay. All right, okay, actually, let's go to when I was here. Well, okay, so I want to see this. Can I continue? I don't have an account. Maybe I should. Okay. Well, anyway, yeah, so if we look on here, we've got salaries. I mean, I'm looking at it and we haven't even got the new company logo, which comes to my point. I can't do anything. Okay, fine. But that's my example. So somebody gave us a 1 star and in the title says pay, but then subsequently put that the pay was fair. So yeah, and I just saw on it, like I say, the data was out of date, so that's not great, is it? Maybe I need to bring that up. But yeah, sorry, that's just taking me back. Okay, so anyway, back onto the subject. So competitor feedback. Have you looked at competitor feedback on Glassdoors? So have you checked theirs? And sometimes it's quite good to do that, because coming back to the earlier point about competitors, you might see certain things that they do that is mentioned that you don't do. And again, we use this as a great tool to look at things like reward and stuff like that in the previous company I worked for. And that's the end of part 3. Oh, we're not stopping. It's not stopping. Okay, so we know I like to have technical issues with this new system that we have. It is new because I've only used it twice. This is the second time. I know it's about 3 months of being in my life. But anyway, I've worked out how to keep it to just 1 layer. So what was happening was if I was deleting it and re-recording, it was making a different layer. So new skill learned. Okay, so part 4, corporate social responsibility. So the first thing is, does your company have anything? Now, if you're part of a group being a global or European or whatever company, there's every possibility that they have their own policy. So the first thing, why did I say policy? You don't even know what I'm talking about. It's very possible they have their own corporate social responsibility commitment. So I like saving time. Yeah, I'm not rewriting the wheel. I'm not reinventing the wheel. So I will quite openly ask, do we have one? And if we're part of a group, do they have one? And if they don't, then it looks like you're writing a new CSR policy. Now, a policy basically is something that just goes on a website. Not just, that sounds really bad, not just goes on a website. It's something that goes on a website that basically outlines the business's responsibility socially. So that could be things like charity work, that could be things like being self-sustainable in terms of how they fuel things or energy that they use. It could be to reduce carbon footprint, all different kind of things that is done. So it's worth knowing and it's worth having that. Like I say, they're usually on the website, so you can get a good idea of that. And I like to find that out before I even interview because I don't like doing stuff. No, I'm joking, that's a lie. I just like doing it because actually it kind of says a lot about what you expect to see in people. The second company I worked for, the one I left, they did have a corporate social responsibility policy on their site. And actually, as a group, they delivered on it. And as a UK extension of it, we did look at things like carbon footprint. We did look at things in year 2, like reducing traveling and stuff like that. And that was before COVID, how we can reduce, the impact we have. So it's quite cool to know. And I think that's good as a HR professional. It's something you want to share. The first company I worked for, large retailer, again, it was actually put as part of the induction process. And it was something that people were actively talked through. So it's good to know. The other thing to know is how is it shared with the public other than the website? So is it in local newspapers? Is it on local radio stations? Is there anything that, if you're driving past somewhere, there's a poster or something from the company that says, some of the work they're doing or points you in the way of events, or, if you're looking to do certain things, the company offers facilities. So, for example, the second company I worked for, they used to let public, not even customers, just members of the public, bring like their LED lights and stuff like that and dispose of them safely. So these kind of things are always handy to know. The next thing that you're going to want to know as the HR practitioner for the site is there any incentives for staff to participate? So for example, is there days off in lieu if they're doing charity work? Is there paid overtime if they're doing some sort of collection facility or some sort of delivery facility? People need to know where they stand. They need to know what they're going to get. And leading into that, is there any compulsory contractual obligations to do so? So some companies do have it in contract that their staff do need to give up a weekend a year or even 2 weekends a year to do charity work or to do some sort of work around corporate social responsibility. So again, it's always worth knowing that. And in the first company I worked for, that was actually, like I say, talked through as part of the induction. It was actually talked through as part of the offer as well, so people knew where they stood. And I guess that leads on to the last bit around this. So is there any actual charity work done by the company? So do they hold certain events? So the retailer I worked for, we used to have a lot of space and we used to let this charity that used to specialize in music, because they didn't have much space to actually do instrumental work and stuff like that, we actually used to allow them to use our boardroom or our training rooms, which was quite good for their acoustics and stuff. So they were able to come and use the facilities like once a week, I think it was. They used to come and use the room. So these kind of things are good to know as well, because as a HR person, you might start randomly seeing people walking around or whatever. And you need to understand what they're doing and why they're there. So not only that, look, I think the corporate social responsibility thing is a big piece. In the world where everything's going mad, you need to understand what the company's stance is and what their commitment to it is. And as a HR person, you're going to want to be at the forefront of some of this stuff. If you're not engaged with it and you're not taking it on board or sharing it on LinkedIn or promoting things, taking pictures, all these kind of good stuff, then how do you expect your employees to be involved as well? So point 6, it's not even 6, it's 5. Point 5 is about sector rank. So you need to know who is a sector leader in both the UK and globally, or European. Once we leave, you need to understand who they are, what they do, what they almost like part one, what do they offer. And the reason you need to know this is because, again, you need to have a look at what different companies are doing. It's kind of a similar theme, to be honest. It could have just been one point, but it's important to understand this. So, for example, the company I worked with previously, they were a leader, they were a global leader, and the sales that were closest to ours, or the company size that was closest to ours, or offered the same sort of services, were not in the UK. So they weren't our immediate competition that had that global reach. It was different companies. And the other reason why it's important to know this is because would they consider buying your competitor if they want a presence in the UK? So it is important to know that. And then it's also important to know what your actual wallet share is in terms of the actual UK market and global market. So, for example, you can even go in closer than that. So the previous company I worked for, given the presence that it has globally, you would think would have a massive share of market in, say, London. But it turned out we only had 8%. That's 8, not 80. So it is important to know these things because you need to understand what the impact of your area is actually having and what the opportunities are. So, for example, if you're turning over in a place like London, I don't know, 100 million a year, and you've only got 8% of the market, then what's the potential? Now, obviously, you're not going to get a billion if you're doing 100 million or whatever. No, it's not even that, 10 million. You're not going to get that, maybe. No, I did say 100 million, whatever, you know what I mean. If you're 8%, you're not going to get 100%. But even if you make a 2% difference of 100 million, that could potentially be your wages in your biggest location. Or it might be the wages of your senior team. And this is how I always think. So if there's different incentives, or even that's an investment, that's an investment back into the UK business as a whole. So yeah, those numbers do mean something. And that could be the difference between a region or a company making budget or not. The other thing is, if you're part of a global group or a European group, what is your region? What is your division? You need to understand this. Again, because as a HR team, you'll be aligned potentially. So the company I worked at previously and this one, we had a one HR model. So we often communicated with our peers in other countries across Europe and in the previous company, the world. So we'd be having HR meetings with America and you'd be hearing all these cool things. And there are differences and there are opportunities for you to potentially move across. There's potential for you to influence stuff. I've heard some amazing things. I mean, literally the other day, we had a HR thing with a European team, and some of the things they came out with was amazing, and I stole some really good, stealing with pride, some good stuff that I want to incorporate with my team in the UK. Not my HR team, I don't own it, I mean my stakeholders. It was really good how they got around some of the challenges that we potentially will face on some stuff. And if they've already done it and they're using the same model, why not take what's already there? The other thing to think about, so the last company I worked at, all of our systems were based on a central platform. So actually it was administered in a European country. So we did have admin rights in the UK, but we didn't have full admin rights. So again, it's worth knowing these things because you might have to go external to your normal peer group to get help or support. That could lead to a delay. That could lead to a delay in the service you provide. So it is quite important to know. And leading on to that, it's important to actually understand the actual structure of the group, not just your UK division. You need to understand the whole group, see where it all aligns. Who does your country's leader report into? Where do they actually sit on the structure? Are they sort of direct into a global CEO or are they 3 levels down? Because again, That's important to know, because if you're having issues and a directive is not the one that's been given by the company, it doesn't match. That's a fair challenge to come back to someone and say, actually, that's not what we say we do on the tin. So, I promise this is point 6. Sales and revenue. This is very important to know about the company. So you need to know the previous year results, the current year's budget, and along with that, the forecast. And then I've got in red writing, and I'm gonna highlight this one. Boom, highlighted. The amends, because people adjust your forecast in month, and people adjust your budget in month, and you think you're being successful, and you're fucking not. Or you haven't budgeted your FTE against it. So look, I think previous year results are important to know, and it's not that it's going to be us as HR's decision to say what the sales target or the profit target is for the current year or whatever, but it is important to know, because some of the conversations you'll be having with people who manage P&Ls might be quite deflated, and you might have to look at things subjectively and actually manage upwards in terms of your, say, director or something. So I've had instances where we've got successful managers 1 year who smashed their budget and forecast, which is amazing. And then year 2, they've been set an absolutely ridiculous budget. That doesn't even take into account that maybe the previous year's budget was a 2% increase, and actually they got 3%. And so yes, they did the 1% extra, but now for the next year, you're asking them to do 7%. Well, how the fuck did you get to that? That's more than double. So it's important to know this, and that's for each individual P&L owning person that you partner with. You need to understand the previous year results, and you also need to understand what was behind it. So if it's a sales orientated background and they had let's say an order that landed in that was 1 million, which is not something that site normally does, then that's going to skew everything. Of course, they're not going to come in with that again. Or if they had a one-off project, that's going to cripple the location. So it's important to understand that. The current year budget, I do try and influence a little bit based on what I just said previously. So obviously I know I don't have the sign-off, but it does impact FTE. And so if you have a budget that is absolutely ridiculous and there's no increase in FTE to actually process those transactions or to support the delivery of that, then it's not going to work, is it? So I'd rather the budget be lowered that matches the FTE, as opposed to potentially chucking in an FTE when that's not going to be the right thing to do, because that location can't hit that sales target again, using the previous example, and then ending up in a redundancy situation where you're putting people at risk of losing their jobs. That doesn't make any fucking sense. The bit around forecast is, usually a forecast is done formally monthly, let's say. And it's important to know this, because first thing is, no one seems to do a correct forecast. Like literally, lick the finger, put it in the air, let's hope for the fucking best. If you're partnering a person that does that, please give them a calculation. And I do have a calculation written somewhere, which I can't remember what it is, but there is an actual calculation to work out your current run rate, using what you think is going to achieve in sales, so what is forecasted, and actually coming in with an adjusted. So if you have a dip, say in week 1, you can still work out what a forecast is going to be and coming at the end of the month. Please, if you have any support in this, make sure this is done correctly, because people's jobs are affected by this stuff going wrong. Leading on to budget. So the budgeted FTE, I like to get this nailed on. To be honest, the last place I worked at was really good. We used to have this nailed on by November, December. Our financial year started in January. Actually, I would say probably November. We used to get the budget by November, because then we had to action things. So you need to come in at the beginning of your financial year with at least a budget if you have to make reductions or even increases. You need to understand what the revenue required by FTE is. Now, this, I don't believe that if you've got multiple P&Ls, this model works as one number, which is what I've seen. So, for example, I've seen different locations where an FTE per, budget per FTE might be 800,000 a head. But you look at the business, they don't even make that in a year. Like, as in, they don't make the amount that it would be if you added up the amount of people to 800,000 a year. The other thing is, if you've got people that aren't transacting or selling, how can they be given the same FTE revenue requirement? So if I'm a warehouse man or a picker, I'm not doing a sales. So how can I generate sales of 800,000? Or if I'm doing a job that is 50% one thing and 50% another, how can I generate sales to that level? It doesn't work. And trying to say that it balances out across people who get 2 million or whatever, no, it doesn't. That's a cheap fucking excuse. That's people not doing the job correctly. And that's why it's important to be around at that process. I'm actually losing my voice. I haven't done this for so long. I've actually realized this is a lot harder than it sounds. So the next thing is business reviews. They're all called different names, but business reviews. You need to understand the frequency. So is it monthly, quarterly? And you need to understand what is required from you. Because if you don't do that bit, your director's going to look like a prick when he's standing there. It's very important that you coordinate this with your finance guy and your director to make sure that the information is there. And I actually think it's quite important that you're present, because these are those opportunities to actually say to your leader what you actually think. And I personally am not scared to do that. Quite comfortable in having that conversation to get my view across. You know, what's the worst you're going to do? Sack me? And it's important that you stand by your director at this point as well. Because if you go against them, when you're the one that's provided them the insight and all this and that, you are going to look like a fucking idiot. And I see this all the time. When I said, no, you fucking didn't. No, you didn't. You put the slides together, and the slides are actually exactly what your director says. Stop being a prick. So it's very important at this point that you defend your stakeholder in that area. The next thing to learn is the HR budget. This is important. I didn't understand what this really meant when I was first into my regional role. And then when I got pulled aside and said, can you stop using hotels? I then understood. And it's very important that you do understand this, because if you have the opportunity to make a saving, that could be a pay rise for the HR assistants or advisors. That's how I look at it. And if you can generate a bit more money for them and that gives them a bit more responsibility, then everyone's happy. So I myself took it upon myself to be as lean as possible. So for example, I never traveled by train when I was regional. I always traveled by car because it was a lot less. And we had company cars anyway. I stopped traveling if I didn't need to. I didn't stay in hotels. I would no longer do trips that would be 2 days or whatever. I would just do a day and go and come back in a day. And I'd like to think that by reducing that cost, so for example, my fuel cost would have been reduced by about $250 a month. That's 2,000, nearly 3,000 more than that in the pot. So hopefully, if that means that can be distributed or that covers the company-wide increase, then let's do it. In my current company, my HR advisor left. I didn't really see the need for one, so that was 30k plus saved, and again, that can be distributed to the team. And I think you need to have that mindset, because when you get to the HR director role or something like that, you need to be able to look at opportunities. You need to be able to look at how you can save money, because trust me, I've seen exoduses of teams leave. You might need that back pocket bit of cash, so that's what you need to think about. Don't think just for yourself in terms of ease and whatever. You have to demonstrate, you have to lead by example. And then you can have the conversations with your stakeholders who are doing the same thing. That's when you're able to challenge back. So we are at point 7. This is the last point of the show. I'd actually be quite interested to know how long this episode was, because I said to my wife I should be done by within 45 minutes, and it's an hour on. But I did have a couple of technical issues, so maybe it is only 40 minutes. That's me trying to drag out the show. Anyway, so 7, opportunities and 12-month plan. So I like to know what the business's actual area of focus is. So is this a retention piece? So you want to retain the influx of cash? Or is this a growth piece? And it's very, very important to understand this, because this affects who you're recruiting. This affects how you operate. This affects how much emphasis might be on training and development, or just keeping a steady ship. Now, for me, I don't think a business that is just doing retention, well, in the industries I've worked in, which is retail, logistics, and sales, I think it should always be about growth. And I think it should always be about how we can maximize the accounts that we have, not just retention, not just keeping them. Because to me, retention says that you're just giving stuff away. That might be a really blasé approach to it, but that's generally what I see when it's retention. Retention is, hi, Mr. Customer, please take 25% off your next order. Whereas growth I see is, hi, Mr. Customer, do you know what? We've been doing a lot of work with you. And actually, we offer you a lot of services. And actually, those services cost a price. And actually, Mr. Customer, what you're asking me is outside of what I do. So you're going to have to pay for it. We can do it, and this is a standard that you know to expect from us, but you are going to have to pay for it. Now, that's a very different conversation, isn't it? As opposed to, take money off your next order. And if you're doing that, that's a negative way to operate for me personally. So when you're looking at this, you need to understand what percentage of the business is focused on one of these two, because that can lead that I've seen two parallels. So you have one side of the business that is trying to grow, and you've got the other side that is just trying to retain. And when the two don't talk, that's when you get a lot of business clashes internally, and that's when you get a lot of groups, people thinking they know how to do things better. That's when you get those really sort of difficult board meetings. So it's important to understand who focuses on what and why, the reason why. So if there is an element of retention, for me, I'd like to see that as a small minority, for me personally. So I get it. Maybe you need a retention piece for some of your bigger customers. But at the same time, you have to target them with growth. So I can understand a retention piece might be there, because you might have some conscience that if you lost them, they got massive impact. But I've also seen ones where, we've retained business because they put the most cash in the bank and they make you achieve your sales target. But when you look at the actual profit, you're not even paying the bills for the building. I've seen that before. And I remember we went for a change of manager, and I said to the manager, you do realize how much it costs you to open the door? And he said to me, no. I said, it's 19K a month. So I said, that's what you need to make in profit to be, self-sufficient. Oh. And he said, but we got this customer and he brings in 263K a month. I said, yeah, but how much is that as profit? And when he looked at it, and he looked at things like the cost of postage and packaging and the cost of labor, it worked out to be that he was making probably not even 700 quid off of this account. So as an exercise, he dropped that account. And the first month he did that, he came in at something like 128K, which was well below sales budget. I think he came in must be about 70K under. But his profit was 76,000, which was the first time he'd actually paid the bills that year. So this is the example I always use. I'm not saying that you have to drop every big customer, but you need to think about, like I said, what is the services you're offering and how much does that service offer cost you? How many people are servicing it, and are you utilizing their time to grow other areas of the business? No, you're not. So yeah. The other thing to know is, what is the bonus incentives and what's the triggers to unlock these bonuses? Now, I controversially don't think that a site or a business area or a branch bonus should be unlocked by the overall company performance, as in like the UK division or whatever. Now, the reason I say this is because if I achieve 150% as a score and the target is 95, then I've gone well above and beyond. And I've done that for the good of the business. Right? Now, if I do that and I don't get something because the business didn't come in, what was the point of my contribution? Why have you given me a target then? Because it doesn't mean anything. So I personally have a real problem with that. And I'm happy to be challenged on it. I'm happy to be told that I'm wrong. No one replies anyway, so no one's going to tell me I'm wrong. But I don't think that. So in the last company I worked at, and the one before that, to be fair, the last two, it was all done by individual site location performance. The second company I was at, it was unlocked by the company, and then we moved it. So and when it was unlocked by the company, I had about 15 branches in my region. And of those 15, actually that's in one region, yeah. So of those 15, maybe 3 would get bonus when it was company wide. When we moved it to branch specific, those 3 literally turned into 9 because people were incentivized. They had a sense of belonging to their building. They had a sense of pride in their numbers. And so that's why I believe it works. And the large retailer I was at was always location specific. And you always, again, had a high amount of bonusable locations. The next thing to know is, have the budgets been revised? So it is worth knowing that if they've been revised, as in, there we go. As in, not in terms of what I said previously in point 5 or 6, but have they been revised as in the KPIs or a scorecard or something like this? Has this changed? And if it has, how familiar are people with it? And if they're not, think about the opportunities you can present to get those KPIs a bit more understood. So things like induction, we always targeted in my first employer the inductions as the opportunity to talk for a scorecard. So you had an understanding of what that was throughout your journey and you understood your part in it. It wasn't just a document that managers read. And you need to understand what elements changed and why they changed. It might be because the business has grown. It might be because the business is failing in a certain area. These things do change. But these KPIs are the areas of focus that are given to people as an instruction because the business believes that that is where success will come. So, yeah. And then the last piece is the end of year run-in. So you're trying to get bonus, you're trying to achieve, you're trying to hit budgets, you're trying to do this and that. It's very important to understand, how does the business cope with this? So does the business come down and say, you, Mr. Person, you must achieve 125% this month, otherwise we as a business are going to fail and you failed every fucking thing because everything is your fault. I've seen businesses like that. The last one I was at was pretty much like that. You get people invoicing shit that weren't even supposed to happen and stuff like that. And people do that because of the fear of losing their job. So I always try to look at, with my director, how we can phase things out. Give the people the message a bit quicker. That's what forecasting and budget is for in point 6. And that's why it's important to have a very realistic budget setting session when you set out your year plans. So yeah, look, that's a little bit of an overview of the companies or your company. And that is the end of the show. So hopefully this one has helped. I will be looking to do episode 9 at some point. I don't even know what episode 9 is. Let's see, what is episode 9? Episode 9 is called The Probation Review. I feel like I did this before. Have I done this one already? Should we have a look? It's the wrong thing. We're on the iPad. Right, let's see. Meet the team. No, we haven't. I thought we had. So that is the next episode. And the one I'm really looking forward to doing is the last one in the series, which is episode 10, titled You. I think that's the one where I'm most looking forward to. But yeah, look, it's been a journey so far. Episode 8 is done after 2 months. That's quite disappointing, I have to admit. But hopefully you got something out of this. And look, if you are getting something out of it, please share. Please share the platform. Please share the podcast. This is all done for free. It's all done to share. I've invested in this equipment and stuff myself. It's a very basic setup. If you've seen the pictures on LinkedIn, I've seen some amazing sales. And I have already started thinking about what season 2 looks like. I have started thinking about a website because I think there's loads of tools that I've created over the years that would be beneficial. And I think as part of my actual own development, I'd like to be more current with things. So that would actually tie in with having a website that could potentially force me to do that. I think the piece is that there's a lot going on at work, as probably most of us are having at this time. So it hasn't been appropriate for me to spend this time or map things out, but spending a bit of time on doing these things again. So hopefully I am looking at penciling what season 2 looks like. My main focus is to finish these episodes. So look, if there's anything you want to see for season 2, please let me know. Please comment. Please send some feedback. The email address is on this podcast overview. So yeah, look, I hope you've enjoyed it so far, and thank you for listening.